I tried to remake Mario in 7 days, and honestly, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. You see, I've never actually finished a full game before, so instead of starting small, I decided to remake Mario, which, as you know, is one of the most iconic games of all time, one of the most iconic franchises of all time. It has decades of history and lore and polish behind it, and then there's me, trying to take it on. So I gave myself 7 days to do it, with the goal of creating what's called a vertical slice. If you were to cut a cake and open it up, you can see all the different layers. That's kind of the idea. It's a proof of concept of what this game could actually look and feel and sound like. So here's the catch. I'm giving myself 7 days to do it, and I'm going to let my family be the judge of how I did at the end. So without further ado, let's back this up 7 days ago. Okay, so the first thing I needed to start with was obviously movement. Because if Mario doesn't feel right, the whole thing's just trash. It's garbage. And because of my time constraints, I just went ahead and downloaded a Mario model and threw it into Mixamo. And immediately, it's broken. Awesome. Apparently the mesh had overlapping vertices, which Mixamo absolutely hates, and it saved me no time. So I had to go into Blender and manually fix this, reshaping the mesh. And I guess at some point when I was reshaping these vertices, I pushed the side of his pants into a different UV space, and now he has this awesome yellow stripe. I'm honestly calling this a fashion choice. I could have fixed it, but I'm choosing not to. You're welcome. I re-imported the model into Mixamo and was able to download animations. These are temporary, and honestly, if I had more time, I'd probably try to animate everything. But unfortunately, I just don't have that kind of time in 7 days to animate this. Spoiler alert, I will go back in and change some of these animations later on, but this was definitely a good starting point. When I got the animation set up, I had like states firing randomly, and jumping didn't feel right, it was sluggish. At one point, I even turned Mario into like a little Flappy Bird character almost, just by the way it was animating. I wish I could say this was going good, but truthfully, I spent way too much time in the animation state. In fact, it felt like I was banging my head on a wall. And that's when I had a cool idea to build a macro that would kind of tell me all of the debug information that I needed to know. So things like jumping, falling, is grounded, sprinting, crouching, all of those things, I needed to know that so I can know exactly why animations weren't firing the correct way. And to my surprise, it actually helped a ton. I was able to find and fix all of my errors after minutes of completing this. And it's definitely something I'm going to store away in my back pocket for the future. Once I got the animations in place, I definitely had to make some slight adjustments on Mario himself. It's funny how an animation can kind of expose a too floaty of a character or too slow of a movement. One of the things I especially noticed was his jump. Before I had animations in place, it definitely felt like I was jumping really high with him. But after taking another look, I wasn't jumping near high enough in comparison to Mario's jump. In fact, it felt so off that I actually kind of looked into the jump and to what made Mario's jump so clean and feel the way that it does. That's because most games use a parabolic arc, meaning that it's symmetrical, that you come up and down at the same rate and the same height, and it's almost like a perfect upside down U. But Mario's isn't that way at all. In fact, he falls a lot faster than he rises. And once I changed that, it finally felt tight. And that's what you want. You want snappy movement. Honestly, the first day really was just a lot of focusing in on the movements of Mario. I really wanted to focus in on making sure Mario felt good to play. For instance, if I was to use the Unreal Mannequin to play this type of game, it would not feel good. And so I wanted to switch things up and I wanted to make it as close as I could. Day 2, I focused on grayboxing my level. I wanted something fun for my character to interact with. That way it just wasn't him running on a flat plane. Day 2 was also the day I was supposed to implement pipe logic, which we will not talk about now, and we probably won't talk about it later either. Instead, I focused heavily on Mario's wall slide, which is awesome, but not level design, by the way. This wall slide ability, though, is fun. And once I got the wall sliding working, it made more sense to keep working on that, and so I added wall jumping, which is iconic to Mario's character movement. And of course, what's all of that without an abundance of particles that make your computer crash? And because of all the particles, it made me think of water. And so I turned him into a waterbender. And that's when the Focus M started playing in the back of my head. After spending most of the day working on player mechanics instead of grayboxing, I decided to finally tackle my task for the day, and I started grayboxing the level out. I really wanted my first level to become a replica block for block of what Mario's first level was, so I accomplished this by downloading a drawing of the original level and bringing it into my level. I then did my best to keep a 1-to-1 ratio and scaled it up until Mario block was the size of a standard 1x1x1 cube in Unreal Engine. Doing this again, I realized my paper scale was not only off, but that I wasn't jumping high enough at all. Honestly, it was pretty fun jumping around even in just this graybox level, but the more I played, I felt like Mario was too floaty and not quite as responsive as he feels like in the old games. After playing with the jump mechanics for a while and creating a default gray box of the level, I decided to spend the remainder of the day working on interactables. I wanted to add coins and boxes, bricks, and a checkpoint flag, and those types of things. Of course, I had to model these and add their own animations, so this took quite a bit of time. And honestly, I am proud of how these turned out. In fact, my favorite thing probably is the checkpoint flag. I kept seeing this in my head and wanted to implement this, but I didn't quite know how to even start or even begin. But at the end of the day, it looks pretty good, I think. This is where one of the big fears of mine came in as well. When talking about the interaction system, I didn't want to create a set of dependencies that would later on break the game. So I watched a video by Matt Asplund, and he totally explained it and saved my game. And after that, I was able to pick up coins and interact with the boxes and walk through the checkpoint, and I had nice animations to go with it. I then added some of these assets to the game, and to be honest, felt really nice. It started to feel like a game. The problem was, I still didn't implement pipe logic. Day 3 was supposed to be focused on enemies in the core game loop of my game. Day 3 was the day that I was focusing on enemies, and that's a good thing because honestly the level started to feel a little bit tired. I was definitely in need of an enemy to stomp. So my goal actually was kind of small and quite ambitious at the same time. I wanted to have 5 different enemies, and a final boss that you would fight at the end. I wanted a Goomba, a green and red Koopa, a Babam, a Bullet Bill, and a Thwomp. When building these enemies, it was actually a similar concept to day 1. I was doing a lot of the same things. Unfortunately, I can't import these dudes into Mixamo, so I had to animate each one of them, which obviously set me back on time. But it's kind of nice when an animation turns out good and you're like, wow, I did that. But if you notice, I also picked 2 that didn't really need to be animated because I'm lazy. You would probably think that I would start with the Goomba because it's the staple, but I was actually really excited to start with Bullet Bill, and I just jumped right into that logic. Unfortunately, this code was not simple at all. In theory, in a vacuum, it's simple. If a player's in range, shoot in the direction of the player, and if it hits, do damage. Like, it seems way simple, but I really struggled with this. I couldn't get the bullet to fire the right way. Sometimes I could get it to fire the right way, but it would fire backwards. And it was honestly a mess. I was struggling with the forward vector, so it was kind of an issue, and ultimately, I ended up just kind of giving up on it, and it was something I didn't touch again until later in the project. But then I jumped to the Goomba and thought, hey, maybe I'll create a base class. That way, I don't have to keep repeating doing all this work. Well, I started doing that, and then once I got the Goomba to a place where I thought was good enough, I realized I didn't know how to create a child that would actually work. I don't know how to function override, and to be honest, I still don't know how to function override. So that was kind of a bad mistake. But ultimately, not a big deal. I just duplicated the logic and was able to start working on the other enemies. Animating the squish logic was hilarious, by the way. Maximum effort, literally just scale that sucker down on the Z-axis and call it good, baby. I did feel like it turned out well, though. The next one I worked on was the Thwomp, thinking that would be kind of an easy one since it's just a square that would fall to the ground. And again, unfortunately, I had so many issues with that as well. Collisions were off. I was trying to set a modular weight so I could just like put this in a level and use it. Unfortunate that it just wasn't that simple. So at the end of day 3, I had 3 enemies that were barely functionable at all, but I had to move on. That was day 3. So day 4, instead of fixing the problems that I made, I took on another mechanic that was new. For some reason, I wrote out that I needed to have a companion in the game, probably because I'm lonely. So I wrote Toad into the story somehow. So just like in the movies, I have him following Mario for some reason. And because of that, I spent time animating him because I can't put him into Mixamo, and writing code because he was an AI unit and I hadn't had any code for that yet. A subscriber of mine asked me to kill him, so I spent time obviously making that a possibility. But essentially I set up a quick nav mesh and thankfully it worked and he was able to follow. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to jump from block to block, so he was kind of just stuck in a section. So that's when I said, you know what, I'll come back to that later. Day 5, according to my original schedule, was boss day, so I was supposed to be focusing on a boss. I decided to go with Bowser Jr. as my big bad, and the reason was because he was being featured in the new movie. So I found a model on Sketchfab and was able to pull it right into Blender and start animating. I started implementing like this cool intro animation that he kind of calls out Mario when he sees him, but unfortunately I realized the scope of what I was wanting to do was not going to meet my time deadlines. So I then did what any good developer would do, stopped animating it, and it just avoided it. I thought, why would I even focus on a boss if I don't even have 5 enemies that are working correctly? Which honestly, this was probably the right call. So I hyper-focused on the Thwomp and the Goomba at first, and believe it or not, I was able to get it fixed. And believe it or not, after an hour or so, I actually had both of them working functionally. It looked like it was shaping to be a pretty good night of development, and that's when like the worst thing ever happened. I dumped a bowl of ramen noodles on my keyboard. Yes, I'm not even kidding. How? I just genuinely don't know. And it ruined my keyboard. So the only other keyboard that I had is a Mac computer keyboard, and those suck on PC. So I ordered a keyboard and ended up calling it a night, which led into day 6. Day 6 was supposed to be my first art pass of the game, but in all reality, I hadn't implemented a lot of things like player phase logic, player health and death logic, the core game loop. I still haven't implemented pipe logic. The boss wasn't working. My boxes were working, but they weren't actually calling for anything to happen. Kill zones, fireballs, respawns, Koopa shell logic, all of that wasn't done. So I was very far behind schedule for a person who's trying to get this done in 7 days. So I wrote out a list of everything that I was missing, and I began chipping away at it on that terrible keyboard. I focused first on the background and tried to get some kind of concept of what the art may look like when I finished. I wanted to keep the Mario style, but I wanted it to be in 3D. And what I made at first was cool, and it probably looked more like Mario than the finished product did. But it was actually just a 2D image in the background. Now, most 2D games use parallaxing effect, which is kind of nice, helps create depth of field, but still's got that 2D view. I knew I wouldn't have time to go draw all of those different shapes, so I needed something that would move a little bit faster. And ultimately, I decided to go with a true 3D route in the background and just pushing things in the distance and using depth of field as an advantage. Kind of gave me a similar look that I was going for, more realistic, obviously in 3D and not 2D. Nonetheless, it was passable and brought the level more alive. So after that, I began working on Koopas. And honestly, whatever this thing is, Pickwick or whatever, somebody in the comments wanted me to add him. Koopas honestly were one of the worst mechanics in this game for me. I struggled with it because not only are you dealing with Koopa as the individual, you got to deal with the shell once Koopa despawns. And you have to tell the shell to do certain things. And so this took me quite some time, but honestly, I was very pleased with the final result. I definitely struggled with all of the different collision channels and the fact that I couldn't just simulate physics on this shell. I needed it to stay on the ground, but I also needed it to move. And if the shell was too far on the ground, it would just stop moving entirely. So this was kind of a nightmare, to be honest. Not what I expected. I then took a brief break and focused on the bombs, and then I shifted towards implementing the player phase logic. Now you can eat a mushroom, you can eat a flower plant and grow. Unfortunately, I still hadn't had the fireballs implemented yet. And then at this point, I also took time to fix Toad's jump. And that was really it for day 6. And then day 7 came along. Day 7, due day. And you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's looking really bleak. Things are not looking good for me right now. But instead of addressing the problem, I decided to go right to the level editor and get to level design. Why not? I really wanted Mario to start off in the Mushroom Kingdom kind of like he did in the first movie, you know, with the pipe in the wall and the mushrooms all around. So I modeled some mushrooms, I purchased a $20 foliage kit to save some time, and then I put some assets in the demonstration level that came with the pack just to get a concept of what this could look like. And to be honest, I was actually really pleased with the result. Didn't take that long, and I actually got a very good looking image, I thought. But this messed with my mind because we were working with multiple dimensions. Although the player was built in 3D, he was built in 2D space, if that makes sense. The issue was, how do you combine a 2D space with a landscape that definitely lives in 3D space? I liked the way that it looked, but I was struggling in my mind to put those two things together. And that's when I had the idea to take the landscape and bump it up against my 2D space. But this created a problem, and that problem was that you could see under the terrain, and that obviously destroys the illusion. So I took another plane and put that in front of the landscape, and suddenly you can't see under the landscape. And now I can put any material here that I want, and honestly, I really like this developer material that I chose. And because of this setup, it really feels like a 2D game in a 3D environment, although it's all in 3D. I was actually pretty pleased with how this turned out. And the best part is, now you can actually like fall through the hole, and it's not feeling weird. I then modeled some mushrooms to put in the level, and I think with the blend of that and the kit that I purchased, actually, they worked really well together. I think ultimately, putting all of this stuff together, it really did feel like a cohesive world. When I was done building the world, I added a quick HUD, and that was the end of my day 7. So with that, that concludes the 7 days. I was kind of stuck with a playable game, but not a polished or even close to finished game. And in a lot of ways, if I looked at the project and I looked at all the things that I wanted to accomplish, I could say that I failed. But I wanted to create a playable project like I mentioned at the beginning that my family could actually play. So I spent the next couple days kind of tying up loose ends. I finally fixed the bullet bill, fixed the fireball, added a boss mechanic with multiple states. I built a menu, and the very last thing I had to focus on was transitioning between levels. I tied it all together. But I made one crucial error throughout this whole thing, and it's that I kept forgetting to do the pipe logic. And so when you get on the pipe, I know it's a disgrace. Forgive me. Okay, I know it's a disgrace, just forgive me, but it does work. He just doesn't do it. Just think he's doing it, okay? Just think he's doing it. Don't even worry about it. He's doing, oh, look, he's going down the pipe. Yeah, so I forgot the pipe logic again. But by the end of this, I did have a game that could actually work and be played. It was playable. Not perfect, but playable. Not polished, but finished, and that's good. So I had my family play it just to see kind of what they thought. Don't, not in the air, not in the air, not in the air.
Okay, please. One more. I got 4 hits. Ah! I was so close.
You were close.
He gets so fast.
All right, here.
I want to try, baby.
All right, here.
Jump on his head, can he?
Yep, he's going to be coming.
Oh, you got him.
He's shocked.
Run!
Oh my gosh. No, she's chasing it. Oh, that was funny. Oh, it's so fast. Maybe he's too fast.
Ah!
It's a jump scare. Get ready. Get ready. Mario.
Here's Mario with mom.
Mario with mom.
See if I can get a coin.
You're wall jumping. You're wall kicking.
I just started. Oh! They give me every time.
Jump on the brick.
What do you think I was trying to do? I can't. Here, maybe if I back up.
Yeah, get it.
How do I get it?
Scoot over. Oh my gosh. This is brutal. Honestly, my family and I, we had a lot of fun playing it. But you know what I learned from this? The best way to learn game development is to try to recreate something that already exists. And when you do that, you realize how hard it actually is. And doing hard things is actually worth it. Did I technically make it? I don't think so. Like, I didn't get it done in 7 days. I didn't get done what I wanted to have done in 7 days. So technically I failed, but I do think failing is worth it sometimes. But the big picture here is that I'm learning along the way. And so I actually feel good about it. This was a good failure. I did end up completing a project that my family could play and that we did play together. And so I can finally say that I completed something, you know? I guess at the end of the day, I think doing hard things, even if you fail, is worth celebrating. Hey, you know what? This was a good experience. I had a lot of fun. It's not perfect. It's not 100% what I would have wanted, but I am glad that you guys are here watching it. And if you made it to this point, you're awesome. I hope you subscribe for more. I have a lot of cool ideas in 2026 that I'm ready to roll out. Hey, I also just wanted to let you know that I am starting a Patreon. This Patreon will be free, and I'm not going to hide anything behind a paywall. Because I'm just now starting, I don't really have a whole lot over there, but I will begin to start posting more and more things there in 2026. So I'd love for you to come out there and be a part of the community as we try to raise it up. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. God bless you.
Hey, Barbie. Hey, guys. I played Mario.